Hello and welcome back to Trev's Diecast Corner. In this episode we are going to be looking at a handful of brand new cars that I bought over the last 6 months before we were all committed to house arrest. So, let's go! First up is the 1991 Mazda MX5 Miata NA from Hot Wheels as part of their Hot Wheels Speed graphics line. This model, Hot Wheels reference number FYB66, is one of the ever popular Mazda Roadster. The model seen here is in this fantastic matte blue colour with a few transfer decals to either side. Although I usually prefer my NA MX5s to come in their factory spec, the light modification of this model is actually quite appreciated and fits the track car theme nicely. The model has a decent amount of detail for a Hot Wheels product, with highlights for daytime running lights and indicators, panel lines for the famous pop-up headlights and a small hood bulge. Along the front of the model is the decal for the in-house performance division Mazda Speed, although on my example the transfer hasn't completed fully, reading instead Mazda Sped. A small Californian license plate is a nice touch as well, reading HTWHLS, although is only present on the front. Moving to a rear view of the model, we can see that although a lot of attention was given to the front of the vehicle, the back leaves a lot to be desired. Unpainted taillight clusters and the omittance of any kind of decals to the rear portion of the model cheapen the feel of this example. However, credit is due for almost all features of the car being accurately modelled, including the presence of a subtle ducktail spoiler. Celebrating the heart and soul of the Roadster, the car here is presented with its roof down. The clear windshield is sturdy and the half roll cage stops this model from succumbing to what I like to call flat windshield syndrome, which is what happens to so many convertible toy cars. The interior of the vehicle is a dark black, which removes a lot of the visible detail. Although the steering wheel looks just like a dinner plate has been stuck on, the rest of the interior features quite intricate details such as two fully formed bucket seats, cup holders, gear shift, air vents, and a glove box compartment. The wheels are of a classic 5-spoke design, one of my favourites and suit this model nicely. The model rolls freely and picks up speed as you would expect for a modern Hot Wheels product. Coming to the undercarriage of the car, we can see some details being given to the plastic mould with the presence of an exhaust and certain suspension components. From this view we can also see that the base is held in securely with two rivets front and back. So I picked up this model I think from Halfords. I paid about £1 or so. Picked it up because I like MX5s and I actually do have quite a few MX5 models which I will be showing over coming episodes. It's one of the cars that actually almost everybody in the team likes, and it all gets our sort of seal of approval, so to speak. This model is probably one of the more detailed ones that I have, although it's not perfect. The omission of any kind of nice detail to the back and the strangeness with the steering wheel of the interior leaves a lot to be desired, but as a toy and as a cheap model, I would say it's definitely worth picking up if you do find one. Up next is another entry from Hot Wheels, the Nissan Silvia S13, which is also from the Hot Wheels Speed graphics line. Model number M48, this model is one of my favourite pickups in recent memory, and is another example of a JDM classic getting some love, even years after its production run. The model I have here is in this lovely sparkly grey metallic paint with a golden and purple transfer decals down both sides, coming together to form a KW automotive livery. There are some smaller golden logos that appear as part of the livery for Greddy Performance products and 1552 wheels. Looking at the car front on, we see that similar to the MX5, this example has some light modifications present, namely a ducktail rear spoiler and a front splitter, giving the car a more aggressive look. The front of the car is nicely moulded with clear panel lines, however there is no paint detail to any of the front fixtures such as the lights or turn signals. Not visible here, but my example seems to have a moulding fault in that it only has one front fog light. The front splitter is part of the black plastic base, and when held up at an angle you can see that the base also includes a mould for a front mount intercooler, which means that this car is turbocharged. Coming around to the back of the model, we have the reverse issue that we had on the MX5, with paint detail on the tail lights and clear Silvia badging. However, there is no license plate on this model. The interior of the car is black, and although there is clear glass all around the vehicle, the visibility inside is diminished. The wheels on this example appear to possibly imitating 1552's whole shot RSR wheels, but this may just be a coincidence as HobbyDB refers to these as being the Hot Wheels wire spoke design which has been in use since 1995. On the subject of wheels, my biggest disappointment is the quality of the gold paint on the wheels themselves, which has chipped off on all four corners, Coming to the bottom of the model, we can see that the previously mentioned black plastic base, with the detail of the exhaust and suspension components along with 2 rivets front and back holding the model together. As with the other models in this video, the car rolls nicely due to it being brand new. I'm not really sure where exactly I ended up getting this. I have a feeling it is Halfords again, and I would have paid probably around, again, similar to the MX5, about a couple of quid for it. I really like it because I haven't seen a Silvia model of this scale in the UK in a long time. You see a lot of them when you're out in Japan looking for diecast, but they don't really seem to get much love over here. So it's quite nice that we've got some JDM cars coming up. Up next we have quite an oddity, the Hot Wheels 1985 Honda City Turbo 2 from the Nightburners series. This little nugget of fun is one of the best finds I think I've had in recent memory, namely because most people are not that familiar with the wonder that is the City Turbo 2, or just the Honda City in general. Model number FJV743, this City Turbo 2 is presented in a very flat black paint scheme with Type R livery. The livery is a strange choice considering that Honda didn't use the Type R nameplate until the NSX Type R in 1992. 7 years after the City Turbo 2 was produced. Odd livery choice aside, this diminutive little model is quite plain when compared to the previous examples that we've seen from Hot Wheels so far. With no painted details to either front or back, you have to settle with reasonably decent body mouldings. These minute details don't show up very well in this shot to them being painted in the flat black colour as with the rest of the body. However, there is detail for the headlamps and the iconic grille at the front. Clear windshield plastics all around, plus the presence of a sunroof allow visibility into the grey interior, revealing a strange object in the rear passenger compartment. The car appears here with some modification, maybe a little more than I would really have liked on a car of this kind, as it kind of feels like it's part of the Stance Nation and it's been slammed. Going around to the back of the model, there are mouldings for rear light clusters and a license plate holder. A large roof spoiler is also present with a Hot Wheels decal transfer. The rear of the vehicle was slightly ruined by the bright red plastic chassis base, which seems an unusual colour decision. While we are around the back of this little nugget, let's talk about the wheel designs, which were apparently Hot Wheels Aerodisc design based on the BBS Turbofan real-world design. Normally, I quite like a lot of the BBS wheel designs, but something about these just don't work for me. I don't know if maybe it's the colour. Coming to the base, we can see the glory that is the bright red plastic base. I'm a stickler for accuracy on any kind of licensed vehicle model, so I find it disappointing when they use bizarre colour choices like the one seen here. There's very little detail here too, although I appreciate that real estate is quite thin on the model that is of such small size. The only detail is this lazy excuse for a side exit exhaust pipe, which is also for some reason bright red. Much like all modern Hot Wheels, the base is held in with 2 rivets front and back, further asking the question for why the rear of the chassis protrudes so far out as to be visible from the rear. So I actually picked this car up when we did Lemons 2019 when we were in Wales. I was very excited when I found it, as I'm sure the guys will attest to. Honestly, this was the only one that was in this Tesco supermarket, I think it was a Tesco's, of this kind, and I just found it amazing that something that is really quite rare and not really very well known has been made into a model and is being sold over here in the UK, or just in Europe in general. There have been previous models of this sort of size by Japanese manufacturers, namely definitely think people like Tomica, so it just seemed unusual. I quite like the Honda City Turbo and just the Honda City in general, namely the Cabriolet version that came out. But I don't think I'm ever going to be able to obtain one because they're actually quite expensive even in Japan. They've got a sort of a bit like a Mini. They're kind of quite rare and iconic. So we sort of had something very similar over here, which would have been the first generation Honda Jazz, which from what I understand didn't sell very well, and I've only ever seen one for sale in the last decade. For myself, I'd probably settle for the K car that came out shortly after, which would have been the Honda Today. I quite like that. I'd probably have one of them, and they're still reasonably affordable to buy in Japan to then import them back over here. Staying with Hot Wheels for a little longer, we are now looking at this beautiful Datsun 620 pickup, model number K07, which is part of the Hot Wheels Hot Truck series. Presented here in a pretty normal white paint job, the truck has a subtle Greddy livery, which I quite like. The front of the model is nicely moulded with details for the headlamps and front grille, although none of the components are painted. The front bumper is formed from the chrome effect plastic base and breaks up the front of the model. There are rolled arches on all four corners with a basic rivet design, probably to give the truck a bit more of a sporty look. Datsun badges are present in the form of transfer decals appearing on both front wings. These are nice metallic transfers that glisten in the light. The wheels are just black 5-spoke designs, but for a truck I think this is actually quite suitable and better than anything too gaudy that we've seen previously. The cab interior is visible through the front and rear windshields, which are made from clear plastic. However, the side windows have been omitted on this model, but this doesn't make it any easier to see inside the vehicle with the black interior. Because of this, it's hard to make out what detail has been made with the interior, aside from a couple of seats and your typical dinner plate steering wheel. Moving to the back of the model, we can see that the truck has a nicely formed bed area, with raised arches for the rear wheels. The bed is of a good size and you could quite easily put items in it if you wanted for roleplay. The back of the truck is embossed with the word Datsun and is nicely moulded, although I would have preferred for it to have been highlighted in some sort of bright paint. There is also a small rear bumper visible, making use of the chrome base plate. Coming to the underside of the model, we can see that there is quite a bit of detail here with twin exhaust tips, suspension and drivetrain components all being moulded. Again, 2 rivets hold the base plate to the main body shell. A lot of the trucks in my possession are not known for their rolling ability, either due to them being quite heavy or having chunky wheel designs. However, this example rolls just as easy as any of the other cars that we've featured so far, which is quite cool because it means it would work well on all of the playsets that are available. I'm pretty certain that this is the oldest car that I have bought in regards to when I bought it before this video came out. And I think it actually sat in the glove box of a car for months, and then I found it, and it had never been opened. Again, I'm pretty certain I picked this up when I was just in Halfords, just making a routine trip. I picked it up because I really love trucks, and there's another truck coming up very shortly in this episode, and there's just something about Datsun trucks. I would actually quite like to own one if I could. I don't know if you would reclass it as a mini truck. They seem to be sort of like a normal size for at least us here in the UK, but yeah, so I kind of quite like it. I like how kind of normal design it is. It's not perfect for roleplay because it does have a sort of more performance feel to it, but I'd definitely suggest if you like Datsun trucks or you like old trucks, definitely do pick it up if you do find it. Sticking with Datsuns for the moment, we now have this rather bright looking Hot Wheels custom Datsun 240Z from their Factory Fresh series, model number DTW89. This is one of Lawrie's and Matt's favourites. The 240Z is a legendary car, being one of the most iconic early Japanese sports cars. For me, I do enjoy them, however I am a bit more of a sucker for later Z cars, namely the 300ZX. This model at first glance looks to be pretty stock, however the custom in the name indicates that there have been a few little modifications made to this model. The main one that I seem to notice straight away is that the rear axle is riding on a wider track, and there are quite wide arches to facilitate this. Camera here makes the orange paint job look a lot brighter than it actually is in real life, where I'd say it is actually closer to a more of a burnt orange colour. The front of the model is nicely detailed and actually features wing mounted side mirrors, which is a nice touch, which is often missed on 240Z models. There are clear panel lines and details covering the entire front of the car, with a prominent hood bulge and nicely detailed headlamps. The front of the car is split by a black bumper, which is reasonably true to form, and glass windows all around, which allow visibility into the interior, but again, being black, it is almost indistinguishable. Coming to the rear of the model, and we are greeted with a symphony of detail. The designers have made use of that black interior mould and used it as a rear panel, allowing for the painted light clusters and license plates to really stand out. A small Fair Lady Z badge decal transfer is also present on the small ducktail spoiler. And before we move on to the base, where my biggest complaints with this model come, we shall address the wheels. These actually might be the nicest wheels I've seen on a Hot Wheels car in a while. They are black with silver chrome ring and look quite period correct to my eyes. They spin and move freely as you would hope with a new vehicle, but the wider rear axle can cause them to protrude a little too much. Coming now to the base of the model, and we seem to lose some points in the cool factor. Once again, we have a silly colour choice for a base plate, bright orange, which is the same colour as the body. In my opinion, this should have been black, as that would have set things off quite nicely. However, colour aside, the detail on the base plate is actually very good, and is similar to the Datsun 620, in which we have detail for exhaust, suspension, drivetrain, and they're all here, along with the traditional 2-rivet system holding everything together. I don't actually recall where or when I actually managed to pick this item up. When I was preparing for the episode, when I was collecting together all of my new cars, I just looked at it and thought, oh, I've never seen this before in my life. It's a nice model though, it's just a shame about the base. I am actually collecting, or making quite a good collection of the 240Zs, although I think I preferred now to look for some of the later Z cars, because I don't think I have any. So, yeah, that's about it really. Moving on to the last Hot Wheels car of this episode, we have the Mattel Dreamobile, model number GHB30. The Dream Machine was originally designed by Elliot Handler and Joseph Kossoff back in 1953 for Mattel's first toy car, and this is way before Hot Wheels was even a thing. Normally I don't pick up any fantasy cars these days, as they rarely do anything for me. However, when I saw this in the toy shop, I was absolutely smitten with it. Something about this model just reeks of that classic 50s design, with the bubble top roof and the long sweeping lines. If it was real, you'd expect it to glide, not drive around, and makes futuristic sounds as it moves around. As there is no real world counterpart to this model, I actually find it quite hard to really critique the accuracy of the details present. However, being based on an original 1950s design, it would be expected that the model probably would be quite simple with its mouldings. The front of the car has this very mean looking chrome grille and bumper arrangement with headlamp shrouds that loom over the headlamps themselves, and it gives this almost mean, menacing look. Looking at the model car from a side profile or even from the top, the futuristic design cues become really obvious, with the bubble top roof design and the silver painted rear wings. The bubble roof is of a transparent blue plastic and reveals what appears to be a silver interior with just a set of chairs and a dinner plate steering wheel. The rear of the vehicle has a lot less to say than the front, and is elegant but almost in an unforgettable way. Coming to the base of the vehicle, you can just see how low the body is set into the chassis, which I guess really helps to pull off that glide feeling when you play with it. The axles are of different lengths, and that is to accommodate for the trapeze shape of the body. Ultimately, there is no real detail on the base, but I would expect this would have been on the original design. Yet we do still have now the standard 2-rivet setup. So this little car, this Dream Machine, is actually the most recent purchase, as opposed to the previous car, which was the most oldest purchase, or I don't really know when I got it. I picked this up just before we all got locked down into our houses. I didn't actually realise that it was a remodel. I actually just bought it by looking at it and going, wow, I really like that. And everyone else that's seen it really likes it as well. Ultimately, they aren't car people, so probably would have just chosen this because it looks funky and unique. But it is genuinely quite nice to look at. And in the questions video that is going to be coming out soon, I actually say that if I had lots of money, I would be making cars like this. Cars that look like cars, but are fantasy cars. I would love to see something like this on the road. Lastly, but not least, we have an entry here from Matchbox. Couldn't have it all Hot Wheels all the way, right? Representing Matchbox, we have this rather nice 1957 GMC Stepside. This model, number MB985, presented here in a 1/66 scale, comes to us in a beautifully strong brown colour. Some of you may refer to this as being a bit like poo brown, which really, yeah, it is, but I like to think of it as more of a rustic brown. The truck is accented with Dodge County Sheriff transfers on each side and an open bed to the rear. Looking at the front of the vehicle, we can see that this model actually doesn't really have the same crisp details that we've seen on the other models in this episode. With a lot of the details feeling like they've been lost under what looks like quite a thick layer of paint. Luckily, the silver grey plastic base which forms the front grille and bumper helps to distinguish some of the more iconic features of this GMC truck. The cab area features clear plastic windshields and open door windows, allowing visibility into the interior, although there isn't much to look at as it's lacking in any kind of notable detail. Coming round to the back of the vehicle, we can see that the GMC logo is embossed onto the rear of the truck, but it is barely legible through the thickness of the paint. On a more positive note, The bed itself is of a nice design with a wood style pattern to the baseboard. The wheels on this model are actually one of my favourite parts. The design looking very industrial without looking silly, and the axles do feel very sturdy. The underside of this vehicle reveals the grey plastic base that forms both the front and rear bumpers, and has a small amount of nondescript detail in the way of a drive shaft, but not a lot else is there available to see. 2 rivets hold the base to the chassis, and there is a strange engraving of a small elephant next to where it says made in Thailand, but I'm not sure really what that indicates. Do you know? In episode 1 we actually covered quite a lot of different vehicles, and this episode's been quite heavy on Hot Wheels, with this one being the only one that's not Hot Wheels, being a Matchbox. I think I mentioned in episode 1 I actually have some problems with Matchbox, definitely in recent years, where I felt that the quality of the models kind of just really hit rock bottom. This model is probably showing the curve coming back up in quality, as I actually do quite like it, which is of course the main reason why I bought it. It doesn't look out of sort of strangely scaled. It doesn't have any weird bombastic features on it or anything like that. You know, it is very normal looking. I understand that Matchbox cars are sometimes considered as being a bit more play hardy maybe than a Hot Wheels. But the thing is that these days I find that there's not a lot of price difference. I mean, a lot of the Hot Wheels you've seen today I paid anywhere between £1.25 to maybe £1.75. And this Matchbox I got from Poundland, amazingly, and of course it was £1, and there's not a lot in it. And I seem to recall that when I was younger, the Matchboxes used to be almost half the price of a Hot Wheels, and that's why you would get them, because they were good quality but slightly cheaper. Either way, the reason why I actually picked this model up is for multiple reasons. Number one, it's a truck, and like I've said, I've been on this massive stint of buying model trucks. I really want to get more into sort of learning about trucks and truck history and all of that, with hopefully the idea that I would own one day in the future. The other thing is it's a police sort of themed vehicle as well. I hope to do an episode on emergency vehicles, because I actually do have quite a lot of those, namely police vehicles, and because this is police related, the fact it's a truck and it's sort of a nice design, they all tick the boxes. So for £1 I thought there wasn't any reason why not to. But out of the selection that was in Poundland probably about 6 months ago when I picked this up, there really wasn't very much else to choose from. I hope that in future I'll be able to pick up some more Matchbox cars, because I do like them, but everything I've found recently has either been of models of cars that I could not care less about, or they are just not very good models just in general. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this second episode. As you can tell, we've changed some things up, just to try out some different things. If there's things you like, let us know. If there's things you didn't like, let me know. Always open to any constructive criticism. There won't be a video like this for a while, because I'm not buying anything else new, and I've got plenty enough already in my collection to go through. I actually have quite a lot of ideas of sort of things, episode themes, so if you can let me know out of the following 3 which you would like to see most in the comments for another, or the upcoming episode. So the options are rally and race cars, second option is emergency vehicles, and the third option is promotional models. So what I mean by promotional models are models that say I've got like a Weetabix truck, I've got cars with Coca-Cola on the side and things like that. So out of those 3, so they are rally and race cars, emergency vehicles, promotional models. What would you like to see the most? And then I can get it filmed. We'll say the deadline is this time next week, so that I can know what I need to film next week, ready for when the next episode comes out. Cheers!